Incredible journey, Black woman CEO discovers her seat stolen, flight grounded in amazing twist. Mariah Thompson sprinted through O'Hare International Airport, her polished heels clicking against the terminal floor like a heartbeat of determination. The vibrant energy of travelers pulsing around her only intensified her own. This conference was more than just an event, it could be the launchpad that catapulted her tech startup into the stratosphere. Every step propelled her closer to a dream painstakingly crafted in the shadow of her single mother's unwavering belief in hard work and integrity. When she reached the gate, anticipation swirled in her chest, but it was overshadowed by the sight of a high-profile businessman lounging in her first-class seat. His smug smirk ignited a fire within her. "Excuse me," she asserted, her voice steady, even as her pulse quickened, "that's my seat." He glanced up, dismissing her concerns with a scoff that echoed entitlement. The weight of judgment from nearby passengers pressed down on Mariah. Was this what they all expected of her? For a moment she hesitated, self-doubt creeping into the corners of her mind. Who was she in this world that often regarded her with skepticism? Growling whispers floated through the air, amplifying her inner turmoil. This wasn't just about a seat, it was about respect, opportunity, and a fight against systemic barriers. Flashbacks of her mother's sacrifices ground her in anger. Just as airline staff approached to mediate, a loud announcement interrupted. The flight was grounded. Everyone had to deplane, including Mariah, who felt her dreams teetering on the edge with her dignity balanced precariously on a thread. "Jack," her loyal assistant said, steadying beside her, "we need a plan." His unwavering support filled her with resolve. They quickly concocted a strategy to confront the businessman, but with every passing second, Mariah's anxiety ballooned. Was it worth it? What if she failed? The fear coiled in her mind and manifested as muscle tension along her spine. They marched up to him, ready to reclaim her space. But what she uncovered twisted the knife deeper. He was linked to a scandal that had darkened her past, a bitter reminder of the systemic injustices her mother fought against. The connection ignited a fiery urgency within her. "You don't know what it's like," she started, as her voice swelled, "to have to fight just to be seen." The gathered crowd quieted, drawn to her conviction. She stood not just as a CEO but as a woman with a history, propelled by every underrepresented person who had felt the oppressive weight of minor injustices. Before she could regain her footing, the businessman sneered down at her. "You think they care about you?" The crowd shifted, breathing in frustration and solidarity. They were no longer silent observers, they were witnesses to something larger, rising against the tide of privilege and indifference. Mariah's voice elevated, the words spilling out, accusations and aspirations intertwined, as she channeled her inner turmoil into a rallying cry. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Just then, the surgical precision of tension reached a fever pitch, Mariah facing him as she articulated her vision of a world where the corporate landscape was open to everyone. But as airline personnel approached, the moment hung like a suspended breath. Would she reclaim her seat? And what would it mean for her future? The stakes had never felt so high, the turning point painfully close yet tantalizingly out of reach, leaving everyone and Mariah on the edge of suspense. The air crackled with a tension that seemed to freeze time. Mariah's heart thundered in her chest, her mind racing through potential consequences. Here she was, in a crowded airport terminal, raw and exposed, armed only with determination and a vision. The businessman's smirk felt like a personal affront, a symbol of everything she had fought against. She had come too far to back down now. As airline personnel approached, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the waiting room's glass door. Sweaty palms, fierce resolve etched across her brow. The fleeting fear that had paralyzed her moments earlier began to dissolve in the heat of her determination. No, she thought, this isn't just about a seat. This is about every seat I've ever been denied. It's about access. It's about visibility. It's time. Taking a breath that seemed to anchor her very being, she stood taller, brushing back the self-doubt that had threatened to stifle her voice. As she prepared her next words, she realized they weren't just for the people gathered, but also for herself. "You will hear me," she declared, and with each word, weight lifted. Everyone was watching, not as spectators, but as allies awakening to their shared struggle. "What I want you to understand," she continued, locking eyes with the businessman, "is that my journey here has not been easy. The path was often riddled with obstacles that sought to silence me. This is not just my fight, it's a reminder that each person here deserves respect and recognition for the hard work they've put in, regardless of what they look like." The crowd began to murmur, a ripple of support flowing through them. Mariah's confidence surged, fueled by their whispers and nods. This moment felt pivotal not merely for her but as a collective realization. What if they could stand together, not just in this terminal but beyond it in their respective worlds? Jack emerged from the background, ready to guide her yet again. "Let us gather more people, Mariah. People who believe in this." His calmness and shared mission felt like a beacon, grounding her even further in her purpose. But as she turned to rally others, the businessman dismissed her, muttering something derogatory under his breath. It stung. Rather than retreat into herself, Mariah pressed forward, brow furrowing in concentration. The sting ignited a fire within her. What kind of leader would she be if she let this moment slip away? "Let me tell you who I am," she said, raising her voice above the rising outrage in the crowd. "I'm Mariah Thompson, the CEO of a tech startup dedicated to inclusivity in the field. I'm here to make sure nobody else feels invisible because of the color of their skin or their circumstances." Her declaration sparked a louder response, resonating through the terminal. It wasn't just about personal ambition, it was an assertion of identity, a declaration of place, and a resurgence of collective empowerment. Suddenly, the crowded room transformed from a bystander situation into a battleground of ideas and beliefs. But even as her heart raced, Mariah felt a lurking apprehension. The closer she got to articulating her power, the more she understood what she was risking. The businessman would fight back, he would use every privileged resource at his disposal to undermine her. As the airline staff drew near, she felt a tension rising again. What would they decide? Would they support the powerful businessman who disregarded her or acknowledge her fight? As she stood there confronting not just her antagonist but also her fears, the atmosphere shifted. The time has come to face not just him but the system he represents, she thought, steeling herself for what would come next. Would she navigate this moment successfully or buckle under its weight? With her mind swirling in possibilities, Mariah glanced past the businessman to the faces of those gathered, and she felt a surge of determination flaring within her. There was no turning back now. The stakes had never been higher. And as she faced the fury in the room and the challenges ahead, she couldn't shake the gut feeling that her true confrontation was only just beginning. What's the next step when every battle is intertwined with personal identity and professional integrity? Mariah took a step forward, the energy of the crowd propelling her into uncharted territory. She surveyed the faces around her, each person reflecting fragments of her struggles and triumphs. Every nod, every soft murmur of agreement resonated in her chest like a chest drum, marking the rhythm of her resolve. The tension from the businessman remained palpable. It served as her catalyst rather than her constraint. As the airline personnel reached her, she recalled the countless times she had hesitated in similar scenarios. An echo of self-doubt had accompanied her through meetings, pitches, and networking events. This time was different. She wouldn't allow the specter of insecurity to creep in. She began to formulate a plan, mentally rehearsing her next steps as she faced potential dismissal. "Excuse me," a voice called from one of the airline representatives. Mariah turned to face the woman, deliberately maintaining her grounded posture. "We can assist with your seating issue, but we need to ask you to take it outside of the crowd," the woman said, trying to maintain professionalism amidst the mounting chaos. Mariah's pulse quickened. This was the moment. Getting shooed away would feel like defeat, dissolving the unity she had just ignited. "No," she replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "You need to understand, this isn't just about a seat. This is about ensuring that everyone gets treated with dignity and respect, and I refuse to back down." A slight hesitation flickered across the representative's face, but before she could respond, Mariah continued. Each word strengthened her resolve, chaining her thoughts into a coherent manifestation. "If we allow this to pass without challenge, we reinforce the very inequalities that have oppressed so many. Are we prepared to accept that?" The crowd reacted, some with applause, others with murmurs of agreement. She could feel Jack's eyes on her, carrying an encouraging weight, echoing his ongoing support. "Ma'am, we understand your concerns, but protocol states," the airline representative began, her tone shifting to a more bureaucratic cadence. "Protocol?" Mariah interrupted, her voice rising above the hum of the terminal. "What about humanity? We can't operate on protocols alone, we need to nourish the values that allow for equity and inclusion." She could see the businessman now, his face twisting with indignation. The flicker of fear dashed through her, she was targeting not just his demeanor but the ideals that defended them. In that moment, she remembered her journey, the long nights, the sacrifices, the resilience that shaped her into who she was. Wasn't that the point? The impact of her voice could ripple beyond this encounter. She stood steadfast, even as the businessman hesitated, his confidence cracking under her unwavering stance. Realization dawned on her, this was a matter of personal integrity and professional credibility. She was not just defending her position, she was broadening the landscape of acceptance. Perhaps, finally, she was ready to embrace her leadership in the untamed arena of life's injustices, where each confrontation could redefine her trajectory. "Look around you," she said, her tone shifting from personal to collective. "This isn't solely about an airline seat or corporate procedures. It's about recognition and the fundamental right of every individual to be seen and heard. I will not be dismissed." With each statement, the crowd responded, excitement thrumming in the air like electric current. But just as the airline personnel began to process her words, she noticed movement from the side. The businessman was on his phone, the steel in his demeanor reasserting itself. A strategizing antagonist was never to be underestimated. His looming figure triggered a new realization within her, the fight was far from over, and she needed to prepare herself not just as a voice contending but as a mind at work. How could she build on this momentum when faced with such a formidable opponent? As the stakes rose, the crowd's energy surged, but so did the risks. What was her next strategic move? With the stakes increasing and tensions rekindled, Mariah knew she was at the precipice of an intense battle, one where the outcome could challenge everything she had built. The real test loomed closer. Within that airport terminal, the path to true influence was about to unfold, but would she be prepared for the ramifications of victory or the deep scars of defeat? Mariah felt the weight of the crowd pressing against her as she maintained her ground. The businessman, visibly unfazed, continued typing on his phone, seemingly orchestrating a response that could undermine everything she had achieved in the last few moments. Each keystroke felt like a ripple in the fabric of her newfound confidence. Ignoring the buzzing tension, she directed her attention back to the airline representative, sensing that he was not just a casual opponent but a prelude to something larger. "Look, we're all human," she said, forcing her voice to remain measured despite the undertone of urgency. "This isn't simply about one disrupted flight. This goes to the heart of how we treat each other, how we listen and respond to needs. If we can't address this moment, we're allowing a precedent that echoes throughout all interactions in spaces like this." To her surprise, the airline representative appeared to soften slightly, a hint of understanding flickering across her features. But before she could gauge whether that would catalyze real change, Mariah felt the pull of her memories, the echoes of previous compromises. What had held her back in the past? She recalled meetings where she had allowed her arguments to drown in the sea of male opinions, the defeats of unvoiced thought still biting at her conscience. In that shared space of uncertainty and fear, she had felt invisible. But she had climbed out of those depths with tenacity. Now, her voice was an instrument forged through years of maturation and struggle. Feeling empowered stirred something deep within her, an urge to share not just her experience but the lessons learned along the way. Imagine what we could do if we recognized everyone's voice, she continued, her tone infusing with passion. If every individual could bring their whole selves to the table. Lift the veil of hierarchy, rather than imposing silence? Can this airport be a place of progress rather than just protocols? The crowd's energy pulsed, rippling waves of hope and dissent that she had ignited. It fueled her own inner fire, urging her to widen her stance, shifting from defensive posturing to an invitation for change. She locked eyes with Jack. He had never looked more resolute. His presence unexpectedly fortified her resolve, reminding her that she was not alone. Yet, through the rising tide of enthusiasm, she could sense the businessman sidling up with an air of potential confrontation. Was he planning to crush her message with disruptive power? The thought alone jolted her determination into overdrive. She mentally outlined possible scenarios, each one highlighting her responsibility to navigate the chaos without losing her footing. Every moment we hesitate to speak up is a moment we allow inequity to fester. We need to stand together for accountability. As she spoke, an idea flashed through her mind, a strategy beyond mere words. What if she shifted the focus from a personal grievance to a collective call for dialogue? She felt the urgency of the moment pressing against her once again, compelling her to innovate her strategy. With a newfound clarity, Mariah planned her next move. She'd confront the businessman head-on, but not with anger. Instead, she would engage him in dialogue, hoping to turn adversarial energy into a chance for reflection. The stakes, previously daunting, seemed now a challenge that she eagerly awaited. As she stepped forward, ready to address the antagonist, she felt her heart racing. It was not just about the seat or the flight at this point. She was about to reclaim her narrative and, perhaps, the narratives of many others who had felt powerless. But just as she prepared to confront him, a voice cut through the thrumming atmosphere, an unexpected twist that could shift everything. The businessman's tone was confident and calculating, hinting at an ultimatum. The real question you should be asking is, what are you willing to lose over this? The challenge hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown down that would test her not only in this moment but deeper inside herself. Could she prove herself ready to face this new combustive pressure? Could she rise to meet such calculated menace without retreating? As she stood at the crossroads of challenge and potential, uncertainty wrapped itself around her like a cloak. Would this be her moment of truth, or a tumble back into the shadows of doubt? Mariah inhaled sharply, a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins as she prepared to respond. The businessman's challenge loomed, his words a heavy weight pressing down on her. She could feel the crowd's anticipation, their eyes flicking between them, holding their collective breath in expectation. This was not just a battle over a seat, it had transformed into a confrontation of wills, a reflection of everything she had worked for. In that moment, doubt crept in. What if her stand only exposed her further to ridicule? What if this powerful figure could shape the narrative in ways she couldn't anticipate? But with each beat of her heart, she recalled the isolation of her past, the countless instances where she had chosen safety over confrontation, where she had muted her authenticity to appease the louder voices around her. That's what I'm here to discover, she said, her voice now steady and unwavering as she straightened her shoulders, defying the itch to retreat. What I'm willing to lose is the fear of being dismissed. I refuse to be silenced by the threat of discomfort. This isn't just about me. It's about what our actions say about us as individuals and as a society. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd, others were feeling it too, the recognition that her fight transcended mere words. Mariah felt the tide shifting, a swell of momentum building as people began to nod, some even voicing their agreements. The realization sparked an ember of hope within her. She wasn't merely speaking for herself, she was channeling the collective internal battles of many who had felt disregarded. But the businessman was unfazed. He peered down at her from behind his glasses, the smirk on his lips retaining its condescending air. "Fear is not a strategy, my dear." His tone dripped with arrogance, a formulaic dismissal designed to dismantle confidence. "What you lose is credibility when you act without understanding the stakes. You think this moment has power? You're playing a foolish game." The jab stung, yet it boiled her blood in a way that felt invigorating. She was no longer playing defense, she was in the game. His patronizing tone ignited a determination within her. She couldn't show weakness, it would only fuel his resolve to undermine her. "Your game is a relic," she replied coolly. "And those who cling to old narratives often find themselves outpaced by the new script." And just like that, she pivoted. Instead of pushing against his condescension, she reinforced her own stance by defining a path forward. "We are all here to travel not just physically but also in our attitudes and principles. Let us discuss accountability and the real power behind customer service. It's about respect, and the stories we choose to amplify." For a brief moment, they were locked in a standoff of wills, his calculating glare against her fierce conviction. The crowd hung in a delicate balance, their energy teetering between tension and affirmation. Mariah felt every gaze on her, a chorus of silent support. Suddenly, Jack stepped forward, his voice breaking in with a calm richness. "This isn't just about policy or profits. Mariah is reminding us all that human connection matters. Isn't that the core of every business?" His intervention was subtle yet impactful, pulling the crowd's focus back to the heart of the matter. As the businessman faltered, the crowd began whispering again, voices rising in solidarity, and Mariah could sense the shift was tangible. She had taken the narrative back from the jaws of disdain, but darkness still loomed, buzzing in the air around her. "Are you actually advocating for empathy in this industry?" The businessman replied, a sneer touching the corner of his lips. But before she could respond, the crowd erupted into heated discussion, voices rising and falling, interplay of thoughts. Mariah seized the moment. "Yes. Empathy is exactly what we need to build a better future, one that values every customer's experience. But every change comes with a cost. Are you ready to contribute to that?" The question lingered. Heavy yet charged with potential. She could feel the anticipation encasing her, waiting for an answer that could both define her role and the flight of many in this space. Closing her eyes for a fleeting second, she prepared to launch into the heart of her vision, unaware that the real battle was yet to come. The stakes would only grow higher from here, and the businessman wasn't about to let her go without a fight. "Are you truly ready to lose everything for this?" His voice echoed, carrying a menacing weight. With the crowd hanging on the edge of uncertainty, Mariah braced herself. The next move would define not just this moment, but her ambitions. Was she prepared to embrace the risks that came with genuine advocacy? Or would the specter of potential loss force her back into the shadows from which she had just emerged? An answer was forming, but clarity was as elusive as calm in a storm. This was only the beginning, and the conversation was just heating up. As the businessman's question reverberated through the air, Mariah felt the weight of the moment pushing down on her. The energy of the crowd hung insidiously, a delicate balance of fragile hope and palpable uncertainty. Would her conviction hold? Was she truly ready to risk everything she had fought to build? The reality of her answer lay heavily at her feet, testing the very fabric of her commitment to change. She could almost hear the echoes of her past, those nagging voices that had tried to silence her ambition, a chorus of doubt she had spent years learning to ignore. "Everything," she repeated, the word circling in her mind. "What does that even mean?" The businessman's brow furrowed, sensing the contemplative fire beginning to flicker in her eyes. "We're not talking about mere ideals. We're talking cash flow, revenue projections, shareholder satisfaction. Empathy doesn't pay the bills. His voice dripped condescension, veiling a flicker of concern. She was no longer just an opponent, she was a threat. Mariah had seen this scenario before, especially in boardrooms where numbers trumped narratives. The stakes were high, but this time, the call for empathy wasn't just a distant moon in the sky, it was critical to her mission. Then let us get to it, she said, feeling a pulse of determination kindle within. If numbers dictate priorities, why are we here? Our industry thrives on relationships, and at the core of every profitable transaction, there's a story and a person. With every word, she stepped closer to her vision. The room buzzed with energy as she elaborated on a strategy combining personal connection with profitability. The crowd embraced her shift, nodding along, some even murmuring phrases of agreement that grew louder. Each approving glance fortified her stance, transforming the doubt into gritty resolve. Yet, she was acutely aware of the businessman's calculating glare, assessing her with cool indifference. You speak as if you have the answer, he scoffed, dismissing her insights with a wave of his hand. But let me remind you, the world is driven by competition. Empathy can't be your primary motivation. It's naive at best. With his last words, Mariah felt a flicker of old anxieties. What if he was right? In a world that thrived on ruthless competition, where would a mission focused on empathy fit in? For a moment, she questioned her direction, but that uncertainty only fed her determination. It's not naive, she retorted, her voice wrapping around her newfound confidence. It's transformative. The businesses that prioritize understanding and connection not only preserve their clients but create lifelong advocates. She paused, sensing a shift in the crowd again, the instinctual pull of engagement swirling around her. This wasn't merely about a business strategy, it was about redefining leadership itself and her place within that evolving narrative. Then came a surprising silence from the back of the room, a familiar face. It was Angela, an old mentor who had been a champion for inclusion in the industry. She approached, gaining attention with the weight of her experience. Mariah, your words resonate. But tell us, she said, challenging Mariah with an intense stare, how far are you willing to push against the system to make this vision a reality? The challenge hung in the air like a threat and a promise. This was the pivotal moment she had needed, the call to action that could change everything. Bracing herself, Mariah reflected on her own values, diving deep into what it truly meant to embrace the potential fallout of her ambitions. I am willing to face resistance, to forge new paths, to challenge the expected, she declared, her voice clear. But I can't do it alone. I need all of us to stand tall and advocate for this shift. Jack, recognizing the moment, stepped in again. Then why not lead by example? Show us how this looks in practice. Their interaction rippled through the crowd, leaving behind a mixed sense of urgency and motivation. Perhaps this was the beginning of something bigger than herself. Suddenly her vision felt more tangible, within reach. But would the businessman, her current adversary, respect this intelligent investment in humanity? Before Mariah could further articulate her thoughts, the businessman interjected. And if we lose the very foundation of our operations trying to chase such fantasies? What's your fallback plan? His challenge echoed loudly, yet in the heart of that tension, another realization bloomed. She wasn't simply defending her ideas, she was solidifying her place as a leader. With each question, every confrontation, her voice grew firmer, asserting her identity, her vision. But the outcome remained uncertain, with the shadows of doubt still lingering. How could she navigate this battle without sacrificing her own values? As that thought circled in her mind, Mariah knew one thing: she would not turn back now. The real challenge was dawning, and its form was still shrouded in mystery. The defining moment lay ahead, and she was ready to confront whatever darkness lay in waiting. The businessman's question still echoed in Mariah's mind, a ruthless reminder of the stakes involved. The ambience shifted, it was no longer about a presentation but a battleground. She saw the skeptical faces around her, weighing her every move, reading her insecurity. A chill ran down her spine, but it ignited a flame in her, one that began to light the path forward. Far from a fantasy, this is a necessity, she countered, steadying her breath as she noticed nods of agreement ripple through a few in the audience. Mariah momentarily connected with them, sensing their shared desire for a different way, a different culture. She then turned back to the businessman, meeting his icy stare with unwavering resolve. Companies that lead with empathy outperform those fixated solely on profit. Her voice was firm, bolstered by evidence she had researched. Behind her, the projector flashed statistics illustrating companies that had incorporated human-centered values and reaped substantial financial success. "I can show you the numbers if you'd like," she added defiantly. The businessman's mouth twitched, perhaps unsure whether to scoff or seriously consider her. Each passing second felt like a competition. He was correctly questioning her resolve, but Mariah was no longer just a spectator. She was in uncharted waters, and her survival hinged on not simply making a point, but creating a shift in perception. "Great, but what if you fail? What if this is your last shot?" He pressed, his tone dripping with disbelief. Mariah was forced to confront the brutal truth she had avoided in her embrace of ambition. The fear of failure loomed large in the shadows of her mind. "Are you prepared for that?" "I'm more afraid of not trying," Mariah declared, drawing from a well of experience that suddenly bubbled to the surface. She recalled the countless times she had taken risks that others deemed foolish, venturing into projects that had seemed doomed at their inception. Each gamble had chipped away at her doubts and ultimately built her reputation. "Success, in any form, requires a leap of faith," she asserted. "I'd rather leap and learn than stay on the ground, watching others pass me by." Her pulse raced, she was inching closer to her truth. The surrounding crowd started murmuring once more, and in that flicker of connection, her confidence multiplied. Angela's presence felt like a shield. The mentor had often told her these moments were about evoking change in others, not merely battling opponents. "Remember the business that took a chance on your innovations? They're still reaping the benefits," Angela's voice floated back to her, fueling her determination. "You have the power to redirect history." Mariah centered her gaze on the businessman again, an electric charge surging through her. To fail to embrace empathy means to lose out on the deeper connections and insights that drive innovation. It's about aligning passion with purpose. That's how we'll foster loyalty, inspire creativity, and encourage a happier workforce. She could feel momentum building. The audience was captivated. Even the businessman's stony demeanor shifted. It was no longer solely about the transaction but a conversation about values. Perhaps her message was starting to breach that wall of indifference. But just as she felt her momentum reaching a climax, doubt reared its head again. "How can I execute this in a world designed to operate exactly the opposite?" she thought, wrestling with the intricacies of her aspirations. The fear of losing everything, her credibility, her position, her identity, gripped her tightly. Realization struck. This wasn't merely about selling a vision, it was about undertaking a transformative path for herself and all who dared to follow. She needed to create a safety net not only for the ideas she championed but for her own ambitions. "I will map a pilot program with measurable outcomes," she proposed. "Let us showcase these principles on a smaller scale. Let us take calculated steps to measure both profit and engagement. If we fail, we'll fail forward, learning as we go." The businessman's eyebrows raised, a mixture of surprise and intrigue crossing his expression. That challenge had come with a hint of seriousness. How could he dismiss a strategy with growth potential? The cacophony of thoughts in her mind subsided as clarity washed over her. Mariah recognized that she was becoming more than an advocate for her ideas. She was maturing into a leader who refused to step back in the face of adversity. Each obstacle only sharpened her resolve. "Now, let us work together and lead the industry in a better direction," she concluded, feeling a newfound sense of empowerment. The businessman shifted, perhaps reconsidering his perspective. But would he actually cooperate, or was this just a diversion from her original goals? As she watched the expressions of those present, she wondered what tomorrow held. While one chapter seemed to unfold with promise, questions of cooperation lingered. The real test of integrity was yet to come, and Mariah felt the stark reality settling on her shoulders. It was not merely a matter of leading, it was a question of survival. How deep would she need to dig within herself to uncover not just her future, but the length she could go to rise above those powerful forces that sought to hold her down? Mariah left the presentation room feeling a mixture of exhilaration and anxiety. Uncertain if she had secured the win or merely sparked a fleeting interest, she sensed that she had crossed a threshold. The adrenaline from her confrontation with the businessmen kicked in, her mind flooded with lingering doubts about her proposals and the potential pushback from more traditional power players. As she walked back to her office, she mentally catalogued the responses from the audience. Some faces shimmered with interest, but others bore the weight of skepticism that threatened to overshadow her optimism. She needed to steady her resolve, to build on this fleeting momentum. This was not just a singular moment of bravery, it was about cultivating a long-lasting change in an industry resistant to transformation. Settling at her desk, Mariah assessed her next moves. There was urgency, a call for action. She opened her notebook, focusing on clarifying her intentions for the pilot program. She began drafting a comprehensive plan, emphasizing measurable outcomes, timelines, and specific tools to track engagement. Each bullet point represented a step toward pushing back against the fear that still gnawed at her insides. Yet, something far deeper troubled her. Attempting to craft a new narrative was daunting, especially when encountering barriers of tradition set by men. As she scribbled down her key objectives, fragments of doubt resurfaced. Would the pilot program be dismissed as a gimmick? What if the businessmen never truly aligned with her vision? The thought spiraled into a deeper reflection on her feelings of isolation as the only black woman in the room. How many other women had faced these barriers? She recalled the countless late nights spent refining her ideas and how often she had felt she needed to prove her intelligence, her worth, just to be treated as an equal. A wave of determination surged. There was power in vulnerability. Suddenly, a new voice beckoned from behind her. Angela entered, her presence instantly relieving some of Mariah's tension. Without missing a beat, Angela asked, "How did it go?" "It could have gone better. I feel like I've stirred something, but..." Mariah's voice trailed off, the implications of failure looming large. "Don't let doubt take you hostage. You've stepped into the ring, and that counts. Now is the time to tackle those objections. Get specific. Show them why your approach will yield results," Angela encouraged, leaning in as if to draw out the core of Mariah's conflict. "Right," Mariah replied, igniting a flicker of resolve. "I need to show them not just the numbers, but also the emotional and social impact of this shift. If they can't connect to it, they won't believe in it." "Exactly," Angela said, clearly proud. "And think about it, your experience as a woman and minority adds a depth to your view that many others might overlook. Use that narrative, let it evolve into part of this pilot." Mariah felt a warmth bloom inside, recognizing her unique position could be her greatest strength. The very qualities she had previously perceived as hindrances, her background, her tenacity, were now potential cornerstones of her leadership. This was not merely about convincing stakeholders, but shifting the very culture of their industry towards one that embraced diversity, empathy, and innovation. The buzz in her heart heightened. She realized that her journey was about to take a critical turn. This pilot program would not just be a test of her ideas, but a testament to her resilience and vision. She needed to encapsulate both her personal experience and professional insights to communicate the necessity of change effectively. As their discussion deepened, a pressing question lingered in her mind: how would she navigate the board's potential resistance to her new vision? She felt the stakes morphing, coalescing into a point of no return. The moment had arrived. She would confront not just professional adversaries, but societal constructs that had held her back. With newfound clarity, she declared, "I'll meet with the businessmen and others next week with a refined proposal. I need to make it personal, compelling, and measurable." Angela smiled approvingly, but Mariah's excitement began to mingle with a realization of the struggle ahead. Navigating this tightrope required more than strategy, it demanded courage. As she worked on her proposal late into the night, an unsettling thought crystallized: would she be willing to risk everything for the conviction that had so vividly illuminated her path? The anticipated moment of reckoning loomed on the horizon, and Mariah understood that the true battle for her identity and ambitions hadn't even begun. How far was she really willing to go? Mariah's fingers flew across the keyboard, the pixels illuminating her determined face as she pieced together her thoughts into a cohesive narrative. The urgency of the approaching meeting weighed on her, but with each word she typed, a burgeoning conviction solidified within her. She would not be just a participant in this industry, she would reshape its landscape. The clock ticked relentlessly toward midnight, and with it, Mariah's exhaustion began to surface. She paused, rubbing her temples, her mind an amalgamation of ideas and emotions. The thought of presenting her proposal to the businessmen churned within her as both a thrilling excitement and a bone-deep dread. What if this time, all the effort, all the late nights, didn't yield the change she longed for? The challenges felt insurmountable, ethereal barriers rooted in misogyny and systemic biases towering like walls around her. Perhaps the businessmen wouldn't understand her vision, perhaps her voice would again be drowned by the weight of others' expectations. And even in moments of clarity, her self-doubt lurked, ready to eclipse her progress. But was this not what she had chosen to confront? As the darkness of the night deepened, a sliver of resolve emerged within the chaos. "They need to see results," she murmured to herself, flipping through her earlier drafts. A splash of inspiration ignited a case study. She could unite her personal experience with hard data. Illustrating the successful implementation of similar strategies elsewhere could not only bolster her proposal but also prepare her for inevitable objections. Mariah stood and moved toward the whiteboard in her office, her eyes scanning for markers as her ideas slipped into a new framework. With determined strokes, she delineated the various elements of her strategy: the emotional engagement, the community impact, the diverse perspectives, her own voice interwoven in all of it. "This isn't just a program. It's a movement," she declared to the empty room, the sound of her voice echoing back as if affirming her newfound identity. Feeling the waves of adrenaline wash over her, she began rehearsing for the meeting. She could envision the conference room, a long table, the empty chairs where judgmental eyes would soon rest. Heart pounding at the imagined scenario, she'd present with passion, using her own narrative to humanize the numbers. If they could connect, if they could see the shared humanity in her vision, they might reconsider their resistance. But as she rehearsed, a troubling thought gnawed at her: would they even listen? The stakes felt heavier, and as much as her determination surged, the fear of being silenced flickered at the back of her mind. Confidence and anxiety became two sides of the same coin, each one reminding her of what she stood to gain and what she risked losing. In the brightness of dawn, exhaustion settled over her body as she finally leaned back in her chair, a deep breath releasing her tensions. Somehow ethereal to her plan, she could visualize not just the proposal, but an unfolding future, one where her voice could inspire change. Yet, doubt still whispered. What if her calculated risk didn't pay off? She found herself at an impasse between the personal and professional, caught in an emotional web that intertwined her identity with her ambitions. Was this reality she dreamed of truly attainable? The door creaked open, and Angela stepped in again, eyes bright with hopeful understanding. "Still at it?" she asked, half-jokingly, but her smile bore deeper support. "Just trying to put together something that will resonate," Mariah replied, feeling the connection strengthen as they shared this moment of vulnerability. "And I have no doubt you'll do just that." Angela's words hung in the air, charged with conviction. As Mariah began to relay her refined approach, that apprehensive knot inside her began to unwind. With each past moment, she was reclaiming her narrative, her fierce resolve intensifying the further she traveled down this path. But deeper questions loomed. Would this journey cost her more than she was willing to pay? Would she be recognized for her contributions, or would she remain silenced amidst the conventions of a traditional industry? The thought was chilling, yet the thrill of uncertainty electrified the air around her. Steeling herself, she focused on the pivotal meeting ahead. One way or another, she would face the men who held power over her future, and for the first time in her career, she felt prepared to demand her rightful place at the table. The moment of truth was fast approaching. Would she walk through the door and assert her presence, or succumb to the shadows that threatened to keep her silent? Mariah entered the conference room with a firm grip on the folder containing her proposal. The walls, adorned with traditional accolades and corporate jargon, felt imposing. However, she now approached them with purpose. The room was filled with familiar faces, executives who embodied the old guard she had often watched from the sidelines, their gazes a mix of skepticism and impatience. "Thank you for gathering," she began, her voice resonating with newfound clarity. The air thrummed with tension, but she pressed forward. "I'm here to discuss an initiative that I firmly believe can reshape our approach to inclusivity in our industry. This is not just about numbers, this is about narratives. It's about cultivating a culture where every voice matters, beginning with mine." The eyes of her colleagues narrowed. She saw the businessman among them, his expression flickering between amusement and derision. But her determination twisted the anxiety in her gut into ambition. We've often talked about results, but results anchored in stories resonate deeper. They foster loyalty and long-term engagement. She launched into the heart of her proposal, carefully illustrated with case studies showcasing successful implementations of diversity and empathy in corporate structures. The statistics highlighted not only increased customer retention rates but also enhanced employee satisfaction, demonstrating that fostering human connection didn't detract from efficiency, it enhanced it. As she spoke, Mariah watched the executives lean in, some scribbling notes and nodding in cautious approval. Their initial reluctance was beginning to soften, and as she articulated her vision, she grew more emboldened, the fear abating with every word. "Empathy is not just a buzzword, it's a strategy," Mariah asserted, her conviction resonating through the room. "And the pilot program I envision will allow us to measure its impact firsthand." When the businessman finally chimed in, his tone was more restrained than before, yet the edge of challenge remained intact. "What if this fails?" he asked, framing his query as a necessity. "What if we put our resources into this and it doesn't yield the results you promise?" Mariah paused, gathering her thoughts to craft a response that echoed her strength. "What if we don't try and continue on a path blinded by archaic norms? The real failure lies in inaction." The atmosphere shifted, palpable energy cascading through the room as newfound respect began to weave itself into the tone of the dialogue. Executives exchanged glances, and what began as a singular challenge had transformed into a collective inquiry. "The pilot program will include comprehensive metrics," she continued, energy bubbling within her. "We will hold ourselves accountable at every stage, adapt as needed based on feedback." As Mariah concluded, the businessman hesitated, visibly re-evaluating. His confidence began to fray at the edges, and she sensed the tide had turned. Had her words resonated with him? Or was he merely biding his time? "Our intent remains rooted in growth," she pressed, meeting his gaze head-on, unflinching. "But it cannot be achieved without acknowledging the stories that shape our audience. Sometimes, we need to risk the unknown to truly understand the value of community." In the ensuing silence, the weight of her words lingered. She could see that the notion of empathy as a transaction was evolving. The executives around the table were making room for reflection, and for the first time, she felt she had truly been heard. As discussions unfolded, others began to share their perspectives, sparking an engaging dialogue centered on the value of transformation. At last, something beautiful was emerging from this confrontation, a commitment to embrace a new direction, one that welcomed inclusivity as a pillar of company values. Mariah left the conference room energized. Although some challenges remained on the horizon, she recognized the profound shift within herself. No longer an invisible figure entwined in self-doubt, she had established her place as a leader, guiding the conversation in a meaningful way. The culmination of her journey felt palpable. The metamorphosis from doubt to assertive competence had finally taken root. Mariah no longer felt like an imposter in a world built for others. She emerged as a voice for change, armed with conviction and clarity. As she stepped into the sunlight streaming through the glass doors, she felt the weight lift from her shoulders, replaced with a rewarding lightness. The entrepreneurial flight she had always envisioned in her heart had begun its ascent. Yet amid the exhilaration of success, one thought reverberated within her: she could not rest. This was just the beginning. With their conversations reshaping the industry, her mission was ceaseless. The energy of accountability ignited a fire in her belly. She realized the heights of her aspirations had yet to be reached. Her achievement mattered, but the journey remained ongoing. Mariah Thompson was not just a successful Black woman CEO, she was a trailblazer reshaping the conversation, rising steadfast against systemic barriers, and leading onward with a resolute purpose. As she walked from the building, ready to embrace the next chapter, she understood that the contours of true leadership were defined not just by victory, but by the commitment to uplift those who followed. And she was ready to lead them forward, unwavering in her resolve. Now is the time for you to become part of this journey. You need to subscribe now and follow our channel to experience more transformative stories that inspire and affirm your own aspirations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure others can experience this powerful narrative. Comment your reactions and your theories about Mariah's journey in the comments. Your insights are vital. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusion. Your support means everything to us. It's about more than just stories, it's about creating a movement.